Roundtable, joined by Chris Christie, Donna Brazile, Jane Coaston, host of the New York Times podcast, The Argument, and Sarah Isgur, veteran of the Trump Justice Department, now a political analyst for The Dispatch. Thank you all for joining us. Chris, you're a veteran of races like this. New Jersey and Virginia, always these off-year elections. How do you read this one?
Well, look, I think Virginia is very close. I think the RGA, the Republican Governors Association, is spending a lot of money. They make decisions based on what they think they can win or lose. So when you see them spending a lot of money in Virginia, I think that gives you an indication they think it's winnable. New Jersey is now down to a single-digit race. Latest polls I've seen has it at 6 points. It was at...
Not as close as Virginia.
Not as close as Virginia, but trend, George, 2 weeks ago it was at 15, and now it's at 6. So it's trending. Now, whether there'll be enough time between now and Election Day for that to happen in New Jersey, but either way, what you're seeing, I think, are the national headwinds created by Joe Biden and the congressional Democrats causing problems. And you heard McAuliffe say it himself. He's blaming Biden. So, I think that's what you're really seeing here.
Donna, these races, these off-year races, often are tough for the party that won the presidential race the year before.
Right. And Terry, as you well know, has bucked that trend before, and I think he'll buck it again. We saw a historic turnout in Virginia, both in 2017, 2018, of course, for the midterms, 2019, but Trump was president. I think what Terry is doing in the closing days of his campaign is he's increasing the level of enthusiasm. He's really focused like a laser on jobs, but he's also doing something that I think is important, and that is he's saying to national Democrats, congressional Democrats, let's wrap it up so that we can get back to creating jobs and doing what the American people want.
Yeah, he wants an accomplishment right there. Sarah, we saw Glenn Youngkin make that remark in the debate about how many times Terry McAuliffe's going to talk about Donald Trump. How is Youngkin walking that tightrope?
Well, we've certainly seen Republicans have to walk this tightrope before. In some ways, look just at 2020, Susan Collins' race in Maine. That was a race where the Democrat tried very hard to tie Susan Collins to Donald Trump, failed to do so. Susan Collins won re-election. You know, Youngkin needs Trump supporters to come vote for him, and he also needs those Northern Virginia, D.C. suburbs that are most interested in the school issue, for instance, that have been turned to pretty hard blue Democratic areas to scoot back just a little for him to win this race. And so that's the tightrope, is the lower part of the state getting, not alienating them by pushing Trump too far away, but in no way tying himself to Trump for that top part of the state with what we've seen is really these school board parents. They're the new soccer moms in a lot of ways that could really change this election.
School board parents, and of course, Terry McAuliffe got in some hot water by talking about parents shouldn't be dictating the curriculum for their students.
I don't know. I'm just getting real Ed Gillespie vibes. I just keep thinking back to previous gubernatorial elections in Virginia where it was going to be monuments that were going to swing this election. And now we're hearing that the new thing is, the trouble that starts with a capital T and that rhymes with P and somehow that stands for critical race theory. Like, we are in this moment where I looked back at some of the polling numbers and the polling in Virginia has actually been remarkably steady. The lead for McAuliffe on August 31st was about 2.8%. On October 15th, it was 2.9%. I think it's a pretty steady race. And I think that one of the challenges we have is that we're going to want to use this race as a bellwether for the nation. Not every state is like Virginia, where you have a Northern Virginia area that is incredibly diverse and very different from other parts of the state. Blacksburg, Virginia Beach are going to look a little bit different politically. But I do think that there's a sense here where we see Republicans that are just going to keep trying something.
But Ed Gillespie, of course, lost his race. But if this state, which had been trending blue for the last several elections, actually goes Republican, that is a signal, isn't it?
I think it's a signal of what this means for Virginia, and especially how to win a race in Virginia. But as we've seen time and time again, what wins in Virginia or what wins in Texas or what wins in California might not necessarily work outside of those areas. I think the nationalization of politics does not mean that state politics doesn't still matter.
Well, George, here's where it's national, though. Where it's national is Joe Biden's numbers are bad. And there's no denying that. And I don't care whether
he's been on a pretty steady slide.
Pretty steady slide down. And he's creating headwinds for these candidates. Look, if New Jersey is a 6-point race right now, there is no way New Jersey should be a 6-point race. There's 1.1...
Yeah, 6 points in a governor's race isn't that close.
George, 1.1 million more Democrats than Republicans. Joe Biden won a year ago in New Jersey by 17 points. So come on, like my point to you is that that's telling you something, and what it's telling you is not what New Jersey's going to do and how they're going to be governed. It's telling you what even New Jersey thinks of Joe Biden. Even in New Jersey, Joe Biden is now upside down.
Well, let me just say this. Joe Biden is going to New Jersey, so welcome to the Garden State.
Please, can you come 4 times next week,
And by the way, Chris, he's going back to Virginia.
Great.
And while he may not
Amen.
be as popular as he was back on August 1st, he's a hell of a lot more popular than Donald Trump, who is as popular as a root canal in most of the country.
Donna, I know you'd love this to be about Donald Trump, but Joe Biden's the president.
No, Joe Biden is the president, but you know who the elephant is in the room in Virginia and New Jersey? It's Donald Trump, because he's not only dialing in, he is calling in the shots for the Republicans.
But I also
and that's
think
why
that
you have all of these cultural wars.
We're thinking about this as an energy
and now
question.
same-sex marriage.
Like, we are seeing a lot of Democrats. This isn't like Democrats being disappointed with Joe Biden. This is Democrats saying, oh, thank God, I don't have to think about politics right now. You're seeing that for a lot of people who've been incredibly plugged in for the last 4 years, they are disconnected. Republicans are more plugged in because they're in opposition.
Very connected. And
Republicans love being in opposition. It's kind of like...
If McAuliffe wins by 2.9 points, let's say, this will still be seen as a rebuke of the progressives who have not figured out that they do not speak for the vast majority of Americans. And in fact, most Americans, when they hear them speak, think, oh my, that's not even the language that I'm talking about. You know, David Shor, the former Obama data guru, had incredible stuff and interviews and data that he had this week, just showing again and again why Democrats are losing this when they shouldn't be. So even if McAuliffe wins, still seen as really bad for that left-wing shift.
And Donna, that study has gotten a lot of attention this week, and that is, it seems to be driving the forces on Capitol Hill towards a deal. You sort of had the most optimism among Democrats for having a deal this week than you've had all year.
Look, the plan is about to land, so go ahead and buckle your seatbelt. Make sure that you put your tray table away, because the Democrats are really focused on getting this job-creating, a future-ready proposal across the finish line. It may have taken a long time, and we didn't like what the sausage looked like in the making, but it's going to be appetizing for a country that really want to be competitive in the future. So let me just say this. And I love it when Republicans talk about Democrats. I live with a lot of them, and God knows they're not bad people, especially progressives, because what progressives are arguing for, they're arguing for climate change. That's a reality that we have to face. They're arguing for access to health care. That's a reality we must face. I don't find anything that the progressives are arguing for in this big, massive bill, which I've reduced to this, and I even have colors. This is not bad for America.
As long as it doesn't kill the deal.
Oh, of course. And that's why I think the president today is going to be on the phone. He's going to try to get those last 2 or 3 moderates over the finish line. And by the way, the vice president this week was making sure that we get the progressive. So we have a healthy Democratic Party and a healthy Democratic
Let me bring that
process.
to Chris. If the Democrats do get this done, is that enough to start to bring Biden back?
No. It's not, George, because when people start to figure out the specifics of all this, despite Donna's color-coded form over there, what they're going to see is they're going to see red. This is not what the majority of the American people want. They're going to be angry. They're going to see red. They're not going to. This is not what the majority of the American people want. It's just not. And so I don't think it matters. And and by the way, now they're moving to, and you can always tell where the progressives are moving next because you read the New York Times on the way in here. And now they're saying even if Biden gets $2 trillion, that's a failure of compromise. And what he needs to do now is kill the filibuster to prove to progressives that he's really serious. I love this conversation. Keep it going.
Jane, take the question I just gave to Chris.
I mean, I think that for one thing, it's interesting because the American people voted for Joe Biden, and Joe Biden talked a lot about infrastructure during the campaign. And I think that what this deal means, it's interesting because voters are complicated. I think that that's something that we always forget. Voters will vote for increasing the mandatory minimum wage, and they will also vote to support Donald Trump because, again, voters are people and people are complicated. And so I think that one of the most important things here will be that what does this bill actually end up being? What does this actually mean? I mean, I think we saw this numerous times with people getting stimulus checks last year. We've seen this when government does a thing and the thing results in something for the American people. I think that
But
we
most
need to
people-
stop thinking about sausage and politics and horse race and think
Sarah,
about
that
what's
does
actually
get to
gonna
the
happen.
most-
Biden administration with those checks. And I think the biggest thing that people are looking at right now, things are costing more when they go to the grocery store or anywhere for that matter, and they blame Joe Biden for it.
And that's going to be the question. If this bill ends up improving the economy next year, then it could change.
It will increase inflation. You can't spend $2 trillion and have no effect on the
Sarah,
underlying
we
cost.
have
Especially with
spent
already
over
inflation.
$5 trillion. So you want to talk red?
Yes.
We saw red
And we're
coming out of the
seeing huge
last
inflation.
administration. We saw red coming into this administration. $5 trillion to deal with this pandemic. Things are costing more because we know the disruption that the pandemic has caused.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.